She's not just my new chief operating officer, she's my executive decision for the future of Mitchell & Associates, my husband Nathan announced to the room full of employees and clients at our company's 10th anniversary celebration. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Vanessa Carter stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, diamond bracelet glittering under the reception hall's chandeliers. I stood frozen by the bar, champagne flute suspended halfway to my lips, as every eye in the room turned from them to me. The wife, the co-founder, the woman being publicly replaced in more ways than one. The evening had started so differently. Our company, Mitchell & Associates, was celebrating a decade of success in the marketing industry. I'd spent weeks planning this event down to the smallest detail, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the custom projection mapping that transformed the ballroom ceiling into a moving timeline of our company's greatest achievements. That had been possible because of my behind-the-scenes work, while Nathan became the charismatic face of our brand. I smoothed down my midnight blue gown, the one Nathan had never seen because he'd been working late the past 3 nights, and made my way through Seattle's most influential business crowd. The room buzzed with conversation, glasses clinked, and soft jazz played as waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "Have you seen Nathan?" I asked Melissa, my best friend since college and our company's HR director. She frowned slightly, her dark eyes scanning the crowded ballroom. "I think he went to the back office with Vanessa. Something about revising his speech before the presentation." Vanessa Carter. Just her name made something tighten in my chest. 6 months ago, Nathan had hired her without consulting me. Unusual since we'd always made major staffing decisions together. "She comes highly recommended from Apex Strategies," he'd explained, waving her impressive resume. "We need her kind of innovative thinking if we're going to expand nationally." I'd ignored the warning signs, the late-night strategy sessions, the weekend emergency meetings, the way her eyes lingered on him during staff gatherings. I'd dismissed Melissa's concerns as protective friendship. After all, Nathan and I had built this company together from our garage apartment, surviving on ramen and ambition, all while raising our daughter Emma, now away at college. "I'll find them," I told Melissa, keeping my voice light. "The presentation should start soon." I made my way through the crowd, smiling at clients and accepting congratulations as I moved toward the back offices. The sound of my heels against marble was swallowed by conversation and music. As I approached Nathan's office, I saw the door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkened hallway. "The board papers are ready." Vanessa's voice drifted through the gap. "Once you make the announcement tonight, we can move forward with the restructuring plan immediately." "And the ownership transfer?" Nathan's voice now, using that hushed, intense tone I recognized from our early days together. "Already prepared," Vanessa replied confidently. "The new structure gives you controlling interest. With Olivia focused on her little tech startup lately, she'll probably be relieved to step back from Mitchell & Associates. And with the valuation numbers we've created, she won't realize what's happening until it's too late." I stood frozen, my hand pressed against the door frame. The ambient sounds of the party faded away as blood rushed in my ears. Through the gap, I could see them clearly. Vanessa perched on the edge of Nathan's desk, her pencil skirt riding high on her thighs, while my husband stood close, his hand on her waist. "You're sure the paperwork will hold up?" Nathan asked, his thumb tracing circles on her hip. Vanessa laughed softly. "Trust me, before I specialized in marketing operations, I worked in corporate restructuring. Your wife won't have grounds to challenge it, especially with how little attention she's paid to the financial statements this past year. She's been so wrapped up in launching Innovate Tech. My tech startup, my passion project that Nathan had, initially dismissed as a cute hobby until investors started showing interest. Now he was using my divided attention as a weapon against me. Besides, Vanessa continued, the prenup works in your favor. She signed it after all. Nathan smiled that smile I once found charming, the one that had convinced countless clients to sign with us over larger firms. Once tonight's announcement is made, everything changes. The board already supports the transition. And us? Vanessa asked, her fingers straightening his already perfect tie. Once the dust settles, we can be more open about everything, Nathan replied, pulling her closer. I backed away from the door, my mind racing through the implications. 10 years of marriage, 12 years of building a business together. My signature on countless documents that Nathan had assured me were just routine over the past months. All while he and Vanessa had been planning to push me out of my own company, and apparently, my own marriage. I moved quickly back toward the main ballroom, my thoughts racing. The anniversary presentation was scheduled to begin in 20 minutes, the presentation where Nathan planned to announce Vanessa's promotion and likely hint at the restructuring that would dilute my ownership. I needed time. I needed allies. I spotted Melissa by the bar and made my way to her, fighting to keep my expression neutral. Liv, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, taking in my face. I need your help, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. And I need you to call Ryan. Melissa's brother Ryan was a financial analyst who had helped us navigate our first major business loan years ago. If anyone could make sense of what was happening financially, it would be him. Whatever you need, Melissa said, already pulling out her phone, recognizing the urgency in my voice. And I need to find Christine Walker's business card, I added. Christine was a corporate attorney who had tried to recruit us as clients last month. Nathan had declined, saying we were happy with our current legal representation. His college roommate David, who was doubtlessly part of this scheme. As Melissa made the call to Ryan, I excused myself to the ladies' room, needing a moment to think. In the elegant bathroom, I stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me appeared, composed, but her eyes held a new hardness. Nathan had taught me something valuable during our years together. In business, the person who controls the narrative controls the outcome. Tonight, he thought he was unveiling his masterpiece, the culmination of months of scheming. But he'd made one critical miscalculation. He'd forgotten who helped build Mitchell & Associates from nothing, who handled the behind-the-scenes details while he charmed the clients, who kept meticulous records of everything. I reapplied my lipstick, straightened my shoulders, and made a decision. Nathan wouldn't be the only one making an announcement tonight. When I returned to the ballroom, I spotted Ryan already in deep conversation with Melissa in a quiet corner. He must have been at another event in the hotel, a stroke of luck I desperately needed. Olivia, Ryan said, his expression serious. Melissa says it's urgent. What's going on? I quickly explained what I'd overheard, watching as his expression shifted from concern to outrage. I've noticed some unusual activity when helping you with your startup's finances, he admitted. Nathan's been redirecting funds from your joint accounts through a series of LLCs. I assumed it was tax planning you both had approved. Can you access the company records? I asked. Nathan's planning to announce something tonight that will change the company structure. Ryan nodded. I'll need your login credentials, and Melissa can help me access the HR systems to see what's been happening with employee reporting structures. Do it, I said, providing my passwords, and I need 15 minutes before Nathan starts his presentation. As Ryan and Melissa got to work on their phones, I scanned the room for Christine Walker. I spotted her near the seafood station, deep in conversation with the CEO of Seattle's largest local brewery, one of our most valuable clients. I approached with the practiced ease of someone who had worked hundreds of networking events, waiting for a natural pause in their conversation. Christine, so glad you could make it tonight, I said warmly, as though we were old friends. Would you mind if I borrowed you for a quick business matter? Jack, I promise to return her before dessert is served. As I led Christine to a quiet corner, I cut straight to the point. I need emergency legal counsel. Tonight. Right now, actually. To her credit, Christine didn't blink. What's the situation? I gave her the condensed version, watching as her professional demeanor intensified. Do you have access to any of the documents they mentioned? She asked. Ryan's working on that now, but I need to know my options if Nathan announces a restructuring tonight. Christine thought for a moment. If he makes this announcement publicly without board approval and proper disclosure to all shareholders, including you, that's actionable. Do you have any recording of what you overheard? I shook my head. Just what I heard directly. That complicates things, she admitted. But if we can access the documents they've prepared. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We might have something. In the meantime, you have two options. You can publicly challenge him tonight, which creates a record of your objection, or you can appear to go along with it while we gather evidence. My mind raced through the possibilities. A public confrontation would be emotionally satisfying but strategically risky. Nathan was expecting me to be blindsided, hurt, maybe even cause a scene that would make me look unstable or unprofessional. I need a third option, I said. At that moment, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Found something. Major stock transfers to a new holding company. Vanessa listed as CEO. Need to talk ASAP. Nathan's presentation starts in 10 minutes, I told Christine. I need to do something now. Christine's expression was calculating. You said you've been working on a tech startup? Tell me about it. Innovate Tech. We're developing a AI-driven marketing analytics platform. We just secured seed funding last month. Who owns it? I do. It's separate from Mitchell and Associates. Nathan thought it was a waste of time, so I established it independently. A slow smile spread across Christine's face. That might be exactly what we need. Here's what we're going to do. 5 minutes later, as the lights dimmed for the presentation, I stood at the back of the ballroom, my heart pounding, but my mind clear. Melissa and Ryan had positioned themselves strategically near the audio-visual controls. Christine had made several quick calls and was now standing by, looking remarkably calm for someone who had just helped orchestrate a corporate counterstrike in under 10 minutes. Nathan took the stage to enthusiastic applause, looking every inch the successful CEO in his tailored suit. Vanessa stood just off to the side, waiting for her cue. The projection screen behind them displayed our company logo, the one I had designed at our kitchen table 12 years ago. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate 10 amazing years of Mitchell and Associates, Nathan began, his voice carrying that practiced warmth that had closed countless deals. When Olivia and I started this company, we had big dreams but limited resources. As he launched into our origin story, our story, I moved quietly toward the stage, nodding to Ryan, who was now positioned at the audiovisual control panel. As we look to the future, Nathan continued, it's time for bold moves and executive decisions that will take us to the next level. That's why tonight, I'm excited to announce a strategic restructuring of Mitchell and Associates. He gestured for Vanessa to join him on stage. She stepped forward, confidence in every movement. I'd like to introduce Vanessa Carter, who will be taking on the role of Chief Operating Officer and will be instrumental in our new corporate structure. She's not just my new COO, she's my executive decision for the future of Mitchell and Associates. The crowd applauded politely, though I noticed several confused glances in my direction. This was my moment. Actually, I have an announcement as well, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the now quiet room as I walked toward the stage. Nathan's expression flickered between confusion and irritation. This wasn't in his script. Darling, we can discuss your projects after the main presentation, he said smoothly, but I was already ascending the steps to the stage. "This can't wait," I replied, taking position at the second microphone. I nodded to Ryan, who pressed a button on his tablet. The screen behind us changed from the Mitchell & Associates logo to the Innovate Tech presentation I had prepared for investors last week. While Mitchell & Associates has indeed had a successful 10 years, some of you may know I've also been developing a new venture, Innovate Tech, a platform that revolutionizes how marketing agencies analyze and utilize data. Nathan's smile became fixed. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably beside him. "What many of you don't know," I continued, "is that as of 20 minutes ago, Innovate Tech has acquired controlling interest in Mitchell & Associates." The room erupted in murmurs. Nathan turned to me, his public mask slipping. "That's impossible," he hissed. I smiled at him, the same smile I'd used when negotiating our first major client contract, the one he'd later taken credit for. "It's not only possible, it's completed," I replied quietly, before turning back to the audience. "Through a strategic investment from Horizon Ventures." On cue, Christine stepped forward with Eliza Chen, Horizon's managing partner who had arrived, directly from the airport after Christine's call. "The paperwork has been filed electronically," I continued, "and in light of this new structure, I'm announcing several leadership changes effective immediately." I gestured to the screen, where the new organizational chart appeared, showing my position as CEO of the parent company that now controlled both Innovate Tech and Mitchell & Associates. Nathan will be transitioning to a role focusing exclusively on client relations, where his talents truly shine, while the operational and financial oversight will move under the new leadership team. I turned to Vanessa, whose composed facade was cracking. "Ms. Carter, as you've expressed such interest in restructuring, you'll be heading our new internal audit department, reporting directly to our compliance team." The implications were clear. She would be closely watched and stripped of any real power. "This is absurd," Nathan sputtered, forgetting the microphone was still on. "You can't do this." "Actually," Christine interjected smoothly, stepping onto the stage with a tablet displaying legal documents. "As Ms. Mitchell's counsel, I can confirm that everything has been executed legally. The board has been notified and has given preliminary approval, recognizing the significant capital infusion this represents." The board, 3 of whom were in the audience looking as shocked as Nathan, had indeed received Christine's emergency notification, along with proof of the financial backing from Horizon Ventures. They were business people first. They understood the value proposition. "Now," I said, turning back to our stunned audience with a warm smile, "let's continue celebrating 10 amazing years and an exciting new chapter for our companies. The champagne is still flowing, and I'd love to speak with each of you about our vision going forward." As music began playing again, a power move Melissa orchestrated from the AV booth, I stepped away from the microphone. Nathan grabbed my arm as I passed. "How did you do this?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. "You kept telling me my little startup was worthless, so I approached Horizon Ventures independently. They've been looking to expand into marketing analytics. When they saw what Innovate Tech could do, especially combined with an established agency like Mitchell & Associates, they were eager to invest." "I'll fight this," he threatened. "With what?" I asked quietly. "The same legal documents you and Vanessa prepared to push me out? Ryan found them all, along with records of the funds you've been diverting. Would you like me to call David and ask which of you he'll represent when this goes to court? I imagine it will be difficult for him to choose between his college roommate and the woman who just became his biggest client." The color drained from Nathan's face as he realized how completely the tables had turned. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I said, straightening the diamond bracelet on my wrist, the one he'd given me on our 5th anniversary, before Vanessa entered the picture. "I have a company to run. Actually, 2 companies. You should join our guests After all, client relations is now your only responsibility. As I walked away to speak with our largest client, who was watching the drama unfold with undisguised interest, I felt lighter than I had in months. Tonight hadn't gone according to Nathan's plan, but it had gone perfectly according to mine. A plan created in minutes with allies who recognized my value even when my husband had forgotten it. Nathan had introduced Vanessa as his executive. Decision. Little did he know, I had just introduced myself as his new employer. And the 6 months following that night transformed both my personal and professional life in ways I could never have anticipated. The morning after the gala, I arrived at the office early, prepared for resistance. Instead, I found the executive floor buzzing with an almost electric energy. Employees who had sensed something amiss in the company culture for months seemed relieved by the clear direction and transparency I immediately implemented. Christine had worked through the night with her team to solidify the legal framework for the acquisition. What had begun as an emergency countermeasure had evolved into a legitimate business strategy. Innovate Tech's AI-driven analytics platform integrated perfectly with Mitchell & Associates' client base, creating a synergy that industry publications were already calling revolutionary. Nathan, however, was not taking his demotion gracefully. He arrived late, barricaded himself in his office, and began making calls, presumably to allies who might help him regain control. By lunchtime, he'd discovered what I already knew. The board had officially approved the acquisition after reviewing the financial projections. Business was business, after all. "We need to talk," he demanded, storming into my new office, formerly his, without knocking. "Schedule something." "With my assistant," I replied calmly, not looking up from the reports I was reviewing. "I'm rather busy cleaning up the financial irregularities you and Vanessa created." "This is ridiculous, Olivia. This is our company. We built it together." I finally looked up at him. "Yes, we did. And then you plan to push me out of it, while simultaneously pursuing a relationship with an employee. Which part did you think I wouldn't discover?" His expression shifted from anger to calculation. "We can work through this. Whatever issues we have personally shouldn't affect the business." "I completely agree," I said. "That's why Vanessa has been reassigned to our Seattle office, while you'll be working primarily with clients in Portland. The distance should help maintain professionalism." The Seattle-Portland division had been Melissa's suggestion, a subtle but effective way to separate them without outright firing either one, which could have created legal complications. Nathan's face flushed. "You can't dictate where I work." "Actually, as CEO, I can. It's in your amended contract, which you'll find in your email." Christine was quite thorough. He stood there, jaw working, trying to find leverage that no longer existed. "And our marriage? Our home?" I kept my expression neutral despite the pain that flashed through me. "I've moved into the downtown apartment. You can stay at the house until we decide next steps. I suggest you consult an attorney who isn't David. He's decided to respect the obvious conflict of interest." As Nathan left, slamming the door behind him, I allowed myself a moment to acknowledge the grief behind my composed exterior. 12 years of building a life together, destroyed not just by infidelity, but by a calculated attempt to take everything I'd worked for. The betrayal cut deep, but I couldn't afford to dwell on it. I had 2 companies to run and employees counting on me. Ryan had agreed to come on board as CFO of the parent company, his financial acumen proving invaluable as we untangled the web of accounts Nathan had created. Melissa stepped up as Chief People Officer across both organizations, implementing new policies that emphasized transparency and equity. And Christine, impressed by our rapid pivot, had agreed to serve as our general counsel. The most surprising development came from Vanessa herself. 3 weeks after the restructuring, she requested a meeting. "I never expected you to keep me on," she said, sitting stiffly across from me in my office. "Firing you would have been emotionally satisfying but strategically unwise," I replied honestly. You're talented, ambitious, and now you know exactly what happens to people who underestimate me. A ghost of a smile flickered across her face. I deserve that. Yes, you do. But I'm more interested in where we go from here. Your background in corporate restructuring has value, particularly if it's used ethically. She looked genuinely surprised. You're offering me a real role, not just the audit position? I'm offering you a choice. You can continue with the audit department, which will effectively end your career advancement with us. Or you can provide a complete account of every aspect of the scheme you developed with Nathan and accept a role in our compliance division, helping ensure nothing similar ever happens again. And Nathan? She asked cautiously. Nathan's choices are his own, as are the consequences. Vanessa studied me for a long moment before reaching into her bag and withdrawing a flash drive. This contains everything: emails, financial plans, conversations recorded in meetings you weren't invited to. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I accepted the drive, tucking it into my desk drawer. Why the change of heart? She straightened her shoulders. Because you did what I would have done in your position, only better. And because I've seen how you run things these past weeks. The employees respect you in a way they never respected Nathan. It wasn't friendship, and perhaps it never would be. But it was a business understanding between two women who recognized ambition in each other. By the 3-month mark, our integrated approach had attracted attention from potential clients, previously beyond our reach. Nathan, to his credit, was performing excellently in his client relations role in Portland, though his personal communications with me had devolved into negotiations through divorce attorneys. The prenup he'd been so confident would protect him now worked primarily in my favor, given the documented financial improprieties Christine's team had uncovered. Emma came home from college for spring break, navigating the new reality of her parents' separation with a maturity that made my heart ache. We sat on the balcony of my downtown apartment, looking out at the Seattle skyline as she processed everything. Dad says it was a misunderstanding, she said, cradling a mug of hot chocolate. He says you overreacted to a business decision. I had promised myself I wouldn't put Emma in the middle, wouldn't force her to choose sides. What do you think? I asked instead. She was quiet for a long moment. I think Dad forgets I interned at the company last summer. I saw how he treated you in meetings, taking credit for your ideas. I saw how he looked at Vanessa. She turned to me, her eyes, so like her father's, filled with a wisdom beyond her 19 years. I think you did what you had to do. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her perception and honesty. At the 6-month mark, we held another company event, this time to celebrate the successful integration of Innovate Tech and Mitchell & Associates, and to unveil our rebranded identity, Mitchell Innovation Partners. The name was a conscious choice, acknowledging the history while signaling the evolution. Nathan attended, still technically part of the leadership team, though now reporting to me. We maintained professional courtesy in public, our personal relationship now handled entirely through legal channels. The divorce would be finalized the following month. As I took the stage to address our employees, clients, and industry partners, I saw familiar and new faces, Melissa and Ryan flanking the stage supportively, Christine watching with professional pride, Vanessa in her compliance role observing from the middle of the crowd, and Nathan standing at the back, his expression unreadable. 6 months ago, we experienced what business schools might call a disruptive transition, I began, earning knowing chuckles from those who had witnessed the dramatic gala. But disruption, while challenging, often leads to innovation. And innovation is the lifeblood of any company determined to evolve. I outlined our remarkable growth, the new clients we'd secured, and the industry recognition our integrated approach had garnered. As I spoke, I felt a sense of pride that transcended the circumstances that had brought us here. I've learned that our greatest achievements often emerge from our most difficult challenges, I concluded. Mitchell Innovation Partners stands before you, not just as a company transformed by circumstance, but one reimagined through resilience. The applause was warm and genuine. As people mingled afterward, Nathan approached me, keeping a professional distance. "Nice speech," he said, his tone neutral. "The company's doing well." "It is," I agreed. "The integration strategy is working better than projected." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, filled with unasked questions and unspoken regrets. "I underestimated you," he finally said. "I always thought I was the business visionary." "You were too busy being the face of the company to notice who was actually steering it," I replied, not unkindly. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for Vanessa, but for trying to take what we built together." I studied the man I had once trusted, with everything: my heart, my future, my professional legacy. "I believe you're sorry you got caught, Nathan, but I'm not sorry for what happened afterward. I discovered strengths I never knew I had." As he walked away, Melissa joined me, handing me a glass of champagne. "To the boss," she said, raising her glass in a toast. I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. "To new beginnings." Later that evening, as the event wound down, I found myself alone on the venue's terrace, looking out at the Seattle skyline. 6 months ago, I had stood frozen, as my husband introduced his mistress as his executive decision for our company's future. Tonight, I stood as the CEO of an expanded enterprise, having transformed a moment of betrayal into a catalyst for growth. Nathan had intended to write the final chapter of our story, personally and professionally. Instead, he had only succeeded in prompting me to begin a new one where I held the pen and controlled the narrative. One where I had introduced myself not just as his new employer, but as the architect of my own future. The day after the anniversary gala was a Thursday, and I arrived at the office at 6:30 a.m., 2 hours before our official start time. I needed the quiet to process everything that had happened and prepare for the inevitable confrontation when Nathan arrived. The Mitchell & Associates building stood tall in downtown Seattle, its glass exterior reflecting the early morning light and the gray clouds gathering above. I'd always loved this building. Nathan and I had leased the first floor when we outgrew our garage office, gradually expanding upward as our success grew until we occupied 5 floors of prime downtown real estate. As I rode the elevator to the executive floor, I thought about how profoundly my life had changed in less than 24 hours. My marriage was effectively over. The company I'd built with Nathan was now undergoing a radical restructuring, and I had transformed from a woman being quietly pushed aside to the CEO of an expanded enterprise now called Mitchell Innovation Partners. Christine had worked with Horizon Ventures through the night to solidify the legal framework of our hastily arranged acquisition. What had begun as an emergency defense strategy was rapidly evolving into a legitimate business move that made perfect sense. InnovateTech's AI-driven analytics platform would integrate seamlessly with Mitchell & Associates' established client base and marketing expertise. The executive floor was deserted when I arrived, the silence broken only by the subtle hum of the HVAC system and the occasional ping from the elevator. I walked past what had been Nathan's corner office, my office now, and paused at the door. His name had already been removed from the frosted glass, the space waiting for my own to replace it. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Inside, the office looked exactly as it had for years. Modern furnishings in cool grays and blues, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay, and a collection of industry awards displayed prominently on floating shelves. Nathan's personal items remained: family photos, his Seattle Seahawks signed football, the vintage typewriter he'd inherited from his grandfather. I would have them packed up and delivered to our house. Correction, his house now. I set my bag down on the sleek desk and booted up the computer. using the emergency access codes Ryan had recovered last night. While the system loaded, I walked to the windows, watching the city come to life below. Rain began to fall, droplets racing each other down the glass. Seattle in autumn, perpetually caught between seasons, never quite committing to one state of being. I thought I might find you here early. I turned to find Melissa in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. My oldest friend looked tired but determined, her usual impeccable appearance slightly rumpled from what had obviously been a very short night. "You didn't have to come in this early," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Please." As if I'd let you face this morning, alone. She settled into one of the visitor chairs. "Besides, Ryan and I have been working with Christine since 3 a.m. There's a lot to untangle." "How bad is it?" I asked, taking the seat behind the desk, Nathan's seat. It felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. Melissa sighed, pulling out her tablet. "The financial manipulation is more extensive than we initially thought. Nathan and Vanessa have been systematically restructuring company finances for at least 8 months. They've created a complex web of subsidiary LLCs, all technically legal, but designed to gradually shift control away from you." She showed me a diagram Ryan had created, a flowchart of entities and money movements that made my head spin despite my MBA and years of business experience. "The good news," she continued, "is that they hadn't completed the process. Your move last night effectively froze everything mid-transition." "And the board?" I asked. "The Mitchell & Associates board consisted of 5 people, Nathan and me, plus 3 outside members, a retired marketing executive, a finance specialist, and a technology entrepreneur. That's where Christine really earned her fee. She contacted each board member individually last night with a presentation outlining the benefits of the Horizon acquisition. The technology integration alone projects a 30% increase in profitability within 2 years. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. So they're on board, literally. The finance guy needed some convincing, but once he saw the capital infusion Horizon was offering and reviewed some of what we'd uncovered about Nathan's financial maneuvering, he came around. Self-interest is a powerful motivator. Melissa took a sip of her coffee. "They've called an emergency board meeting for noon today to formally ratify what happened last night." I nodded, mentally preparing for that confrontation. "What about the employees? What's the message going out to them?" Christine and I drafted an internal memo announcing the acquisition and restructuring in positive terms, focusing on growth opportunities and the exciting integration of technologies. It's ready for your approval. "And Nathan? Vanessa?" Melissa's expression hardened slightly. "The memo indicates that Nathan will be transitioning to head up client relations, utilizing his strengths while you assume CEO responsibilities of the expanded company. Vanessa's reassignment to the audit department is framed as part of our new compliance initiatives." I scrolled through the document on Melissa's tablet, impressed with how it transformed last night's corporate coup into an exciting strategic repositioning. Nothing explicitly mentioned the attempted takeover by Nathan and Vanessa or any hint of personal betrayal. It was professional, forward-looking, and completely bulletproof. "It's perfect," I said, handing the tablet back. "Send it out at 8:30, right after people settle in." "What about Nathan?" Melissa asked carefully. "He'll be furious when he sees this." I turned to the computer, now fully loaded and waiting for my password. "Nathan made his choice 8 months ago when he and Vanessa started plotting. I'm making mine now." As I typed in my credentials, I couldn't help but think about how Nathan had gradually changed over the past few years. When we started the company, we were equal partners in every sense, sharing the workload, the vision, the sleepless nights, worrying about making payroll. But as Mitchell & Associates grew more successful, Nathan had increasingly positioned himself as the face of the company, the visionary leader, while I handled operations, finances, and the unglamorous but essential work that kept everything running. The shift had been so gradual I barely noticed it happening. A speaking engagement here, a magazine profile there, until suddenly he was the marketing genius behind Mitchell and Associates, and I was. What? The supportive wife? The behind-the-scenes operator? I'd started Innovate Tech partly to reclaim my own identity, to build something that was entirely mine. Nathan had dismissed it as a cute side project initially, telling me I was spreading myself too thin. In retrospect, his lack of interest had been a blessing. It had allowed me to develop my AI marketing platform away from his influence and ultimately create the leverage I needed when the moment of crisis arrived. By 8 a.m., the office began filling with employees. I could hear their voices in the hallway, the normal morning chatter mixed with hushed discussions about last night's dramatic events. News traveled fast in our industry, and the public confrontation at the gala had guaranteed that everyone would be discussing what happened. At 8:15, Ryan arrived, looking remarkably put together for someone who had been working through the night. His financial acumen had been crucial in understanding the scope of Nathan's scheme and would be essential in the days ahead. "Morning, boss," he said with a tired smile, dropping into the chair beside Melissa. The Horizon team has been amazing. Their legal department worked through the night to structure this deal legitimately. What started as an emergency measure has actually turned into a brilliant business strategy. "How solid is our position?" I asked. "Very. The preliminary agreement gives you controlling interest in the parent company that now owns both Mitchell and Associates and Innovate Tech. Nathan retains his ownership shares, but they're now minority shares in the restructured entity. What about these?" I gestured to the flowchart of questionable financial entities Nathan and Vanessa had created. Ryan's expression turned serious. "We've frozen all of them pending review. Nathan can't access any of the transferred funds or assets without your approval now." He hesitated. "There's something else you should know. We found evidence that Nathan was planning to file for divorce once the company restructuring was complete. There are emails between him and a divorce attorney from Williams & Bennett discussing strategy." The news shouldn't have hurt. I'd already guessed as much from what I'd overheard, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a physical blow. 15 years of marriage, and he'd been planning its end with the same calculated precision he'd applied to pushing me out of our company. "Does the divorce attorney mention the prenup?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Ryan and Melissa exchanged glances. "Yes," Ryan admitted. "Nathan was confident it would limit your claims on company assets, especially after the planned restructuring." I almost laughed at the irony. Our prenuptial agreement had been Nathan's idea when we married. At the time, neither of us had significant assets, but he'd been determined to protect both of us as we built our careers. Now, that same document would severely limit his claims on the company I now controlled. At 8:30 exactly, Melissa sent out the internal memo. The effect was immediate. We could hear the buzz of conversations intensifying throughout the floor as employees read the announcement and processed its implications. At 9:15, the elevator dinged, and the office suddenly went quiet. Nathan had arrived. I took a deep breath and straightened the papers on my desk, his desk, preparing for the confrontation that was inevitably coming. Through the glass walls of the office, I could see employees watching surreptitiously as Nathan strode across the floor, his face tight with barely contained fury. He'd obviously seen the memo. He didn't knock, simply pushed the door open and slammed it behind him. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, waving his phone with the memo displayed. I remained seated, maintaining the position of power. "Good morning, Nathan. I see you've read the announcement." "This is absurd," he spat. "You can't just take over the company based on some emergency board approval. I'll fight this." "Please sit down," I said calmly, gesturing to one of the visitor chairs. Creating a scene in front of the employees won't help either of us. He remained standing, his knuckles white around his phone. "This is our company, Olivia. We built it together." "Yes, we did," I agreed. "And then you and Vanessa spent 8 months creating a financial structure designed to push me out of it while simultaneously pursuing a personal relationship. Which part did you think I wouldn't discover?" Nathan's expression flickered. Calculation, replacing anger as he realized how much I knew. He finally took a seat, his body language shifting from confrontational to strategic. "Whatever you think you know, there's an explanation," he began, using the same soothing tone he employed with difficult clients. "I'm sure there is," I interrupted. "And you can explain it all to the board at noon. They're particularly interested in hearing about these." I turned my monitor so he could see the diagram of shell companies and financial transfers Ryan had uncovered. The color drained from Nathan's face as he recognized the extent of our discovery. For a moment, he looked genuinely lost, a man watching his carefully constructed plans collapse around him. Then, like the skilled strategist he was, he changed tactics. "Olivia, whatever issues we have personally shouldn't affect the business. We can work through this." "I completely agree," I said. "That's why the restructuring announcement focuses entirely on business strategy and growth opportunities. Your relationship with Vanessa isn't mentioned anywhere." Relief flickered across his face, quickly replaced by suspicion. "What exactly are you proposing?" "It's all in the memo. You'll transition to lead client relations, where your talents truly shine, while I assume CEO responsibilities of the expanded company. Vanessa will be reassigned to our Seattle office, while you'll primarily work with clients in Portland. The distance should help maintain professionalism." The Seattle-Portland division had been Melissa's suggestion, a subtle but effective way to separate them without outright firing either one, which could have created legal complications. Nathan's face flushed. "You can't dictate where I work." "Actually, as CEO, I can. It's in your amended contract, which you'll find in your email." Christine was quite thorough. He sat in silence for a long moment, no doubt calculating potential countermoves and finding none. I had outmaneuvered him completely. "And our marriage?" he finally asked, his voice lower. "Our home?" Despite everything, the question caused a pang in my chest. 15 years together, reduced to a business negotiation. "I've moved into the downtown apartment," I said, referring to the corporate apartment we kept for visiting clients. "You can stay at the house until we decide next." Steps. "I suggest you consult an attorney who isn't from Williams & Bennett. They've decided to respect the obvious conflict of interest." Nathan seemed to age before my eyes, the confident facade crumbling to reveal genuine distress. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We could work something out." "Like you were working something out with Vanessa?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Planning my professional and personal replacement while I was busy growing the company and launching Innovate Tech?" He had no answer for that. "The board meeting is at noon," I continued. "I suggest you use the time until then to prepare your explanation for the financial irregularities." "And Nathan? If you try to contact Vanessa before then, I'll know. Her company devices are being monitored." He stood slowly, defeat evident in every line of his body. At the door, he paused. "I never meant for it to go this far." I looked at the stranger who had been my husband, partner, and best friend for 15 years. "Yes, you did. You just never meant to get caught." After he left, I allowed myself a moment of weakness, closing my eyes against the threatening tears. When I opened them, Melissa was standing in the doorway, concern written across her face. "You okay?" she asked softly. I straightened my shoulders. "I will be. We have a board meeting to prepare for." The remainder of the morning passed in a blur of preparation. Ryan finalized the financial presentation with the Horizon team. Christine arrived with her legal associates, armed with documentation and prepared for any challenges. Melissa coordinated with HR to handle the inevitable staff questions and concerns. By 11:30, the executive conference room was prepared for the emergency board meeting. Through the glass walls, I could see employees trying to appear busy while obviously watching the unfolding drama. Can't blame them, I thought. We were giving them quite a show. At 11:45, Vanessa arrived, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. She'd clearly received both the company-wide memo and notification of her reassignment. Her eyes darted around the executive floor, no doubt looking for Nathan, but he remained sequestered in one of the smaller offices, preparing for the board meeting with David, his college roommate who also served as our corporate counsel. I watched. From Nathan's, my, office, as Christine intercepted Vanessa, steering her into a small conference room. Christine had insisted on meeting with Vanessa separately before the board meeting, a strategy I'd approved. "What do you think she'll do?" I asked Ryan, who was reviewing final numbers for our presentation. He glanced up at Vanessa's tense posture visible through the conference room glass. "If she's smart, she'll realize her best option is to cooperate. The evidence against her is substantial, but not criminal, yet." He closed his laptop. "Nathan's the bigger problem. He won't give up control easily." "No," I agreed. "But he doesn't have much choice." At noon precisely, the board members arrived. Thomas Harrington, the retired marketing executive who served as our chairman, greeted me with a careful neutrality that suggested he was reserving judgment until he heard all sides. Patricia Jenkins, the finance specialist, offered a brief nod, her expression unreadable. And Miguel Santana, the tech entrepreneur, actually winked at me, clearly enjoying the corporate drama. We gathered in the conference room, the tension palpable as Nathan and Vanessa were seated on opposite sides of the table, both avoiding eye contact with each other and with me. David looked uncomfortable, caught between his friendship with Nathan and his professional responsibilities to the company. "Well," Thomas began once everyone was settled, "I think we can all agree this is an unusual circumstance." He turned to me. "Olivia, perhaps you could start by explaining exactly what transpired last night and the subsequent acquisition by Horizon Ventures." For the next 20 minutes, I presented a clinical, business-focused explanation of the Horizon acquisition, the strategic benefits of integrating InnovateTech's AI platform with Mitchell & Associates' marketing expertise, and the projected financial upside. I deliberately avoided any mention of personal relationships or betrayal, focusing solely on the business case. Ryan followed with a detailed financial presentation, and Christine outlined the legal structure of the deal. Throughout it all, Nathan remained silent, his jaw tight, while Vanessa stared at her hands folded on the table. When we finished, Thomas turned to Nathan. "This all seems quite advantageous from a business perspective. But I have to ask, why wasn't this acquisition strategy discussed with the full board before it was executed?" Nathan straightened, seizing the opening. "Because it wasn't planned, Thomas. This was an ambush orchestrated by my wife in response to personal issues between us." Patricia Jenkins raised an eyebrow. "Personal issues that somehow relate to these?" She held up printouts of the financial diagrams Ryan had prepared, showing the network of shell companies and asset transfers. "Because these look remarkably like an attempt to restructure company ownership without board approval." Nathan shot a venomous glance at Ryan. "Those are preliminary planning documents for potential tax strategies. Nothing has been implemented." "Actually," Ryan interjected smoothly, "several of these entities have been actively receiving fund transfers for months. I have the bank records if you'd like to review them." The meeting devolved from there into a detailed examination of Nathan and Vanessa's financial maneuvering. David looked increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted, clearly realizing he had been kept in the dark about much of it. After 2 grueling hours, Thomas called a brief recess. As board members stepped out to make calls and grab coffee, Nathan approached me in the hallway. "You've made your point," he said quietly. Name your price. I studied the man I had once trusted with everything: my heart, my future, my professional legacy. This isn't a negotiation, Nathan. This is a correction. When the board reconvened, Thomas got straight to the point. Based on the evidence presented, I believe we have two issues to address: the legitimacy of the Horizon acquisition and the apparent attempt by Nathan and Ms. Carter to restructure company ownership without board knowledge or approval. Patricia. Jenkins nodded. From a financial perspective, the Horizon deal appears sound, beneficial even. The integration of technologies presents significant growth opportunities. I agree, Miguel added. The AI marketing analytics platform Olivia has developed at Innovate Tech is exactly where our industry is heading. This acquisition positions us ahead of the curve. Thomas turned to Nathan. As for the unauthorized financial restructuring, he left the statement hanging. Nathan's lawyer mode kicked in. Nothing illegal was done. All actions were within my authority as CEO. Perhaps technically legal, Patricia countered, but certainly not within the spirit of your fiduciary duty to the company and its shareholders, including your wife. After further discussion, the board voted unanimously to ratify the Horizon acquisition and the resulting company restructuring, with me as CEO of the parent company, Mitchell Innovation Partners. Nathan would indeed transition to head client relations, reporting directly to me, and Vanessa would be reassigned to the audit department under strict supervision. As the meeting concluded, I felt no triumph, only a weary relief that the first major hurdle had been cleared. This was just the beginning of what promised to be a complicated transition, both professionally and personally. The board members filed out, Thomas pausing to speak with me quietly. For what it's worth, Olivia, I always thought you were the steadier hand at the wheel. Nathan has vision, but vision without execution is just hallucination. Thank you, Thomas, I replied, genuinely appreciative of his support. As everyone dispersed, I found myself alone in the conference room, staring out at the Seattle skyline now obscured by heavy rain. The weather matched my mood, turbulent, gray, but with the promise of eventual clearing. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, my daughter. Mom, is everything okay? Dad called, sounding weird. What's going on? My heart sank. In the chaos of the past 24 hours, I hadn't had time to think about how this would affect Emma. She was a sophomore at Stanford, focused on her studies and campus life, largely insulated from the day-to-day reality of her parents' relationship. Until now. Everything's fine, I texted back. Business changes at the company. I'll call you tonight and explain everything. How exactly does one explain to their child that her father had been planning to leave her mother while simultaneously pushing her out of their company? That the foundation of their family had been built on shifting sand? Later that afternoon, I met with Christine to discuss next steps. The corporate issues were being handled efficiently, but the personal ones required different expertise. I've taken the liberty of contacting Patricia Whitmore, Christine said, sliding a business card across the desk. She's the best divorcee, attorney in Seattle, and she has experience with complex business entanglements. I picked up the card, running my thumb over the embossed letters. Divorce. Such a small word for such a seismic change. Nathan's already meeting with attorneys. Christine continued gently. You need to protect yourself. I know, I sighed. It's just hard to accept, she finished for me. Of course it is, but from what I've seen, you're stronger than you realize. That evening, I returned to the corporate apartment that would be my home for the foreseeable future. It was sleekly furnished, but impersonal, designed for visiting executives, not for living. I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of wine, trying to process the whirlwind of the past 36 hours. My phone rang. Emma. I took a deep breath and answered. Mom, what the hell is going on? She demanded without preamble. Dad's being super vague, saying there's been a restructuring at the company and that you're going through a phase. Are you guys getting divorced? Leave it to my daughter to cut straight to the heart of the matter. Emma had always been perceptive, a trait that made her an excellent student but a challenging teenager. It's complicated, sweetheart, I began, then stopped myself. Emma deserved better than platitudes. Yes, I think we are. Your father has been involved with someone else, his secretary, Vanessa. The silence on the other end was deafening. Emma, I knew it, she finally said, her voice tight with anger. I knew something was up with them. Last time I visited, the way he looked at her. I told myself I was imagining things. I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't want you to find out like this. Does this have something to do with why you're now CEO? Dad made it sound like you staged some kind of corporate takeover. I almost laughed at Nathan's characterization. That's his perspective. The reality is, Dad and Vanessa were planning to push me out of the company. I found out and took preventative measures. Good, Emma said firmly. He deserved it. Emma, I don't want to put you in the middle of this. Mom, I'm not a child. I interned at the company last summer, remember? I saw how Dad treated you in meetings, taking credit for your ideas. I'm just glad you're finally standing up for yourself. Her support brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. Do you want me to come home this weekend? I could get a flight tomorrow after classes. No, you focus on your studies. I'm okay, really. This is all very fresh, but I'm handling it. After we hung up, I curled up on the apartment's uncomfortable sofa and let the tears come. Tears of grief for the marriage I thought I had. Tears of relief that the pretense was over. Tears of anxiety for the uncertain future ahead. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. We need to talk about how we're going to handle this with Emma. Too late, I thought. Our daughter had always been able to see through his charm to the truth underneath. Another text arrived, this one from Melissa. Dinner? You shouldn't be alone tonight. I smiled through my tears, grateful for her friendship. Yes, please bring wine. An hour later, Melissa arrived with not just wine, but Ryan, Chinese takeout, and a determination to distract me from my troubles. As we sat around the apartment's minimalist dining table, sharing kung pao chicken and strategizing about the company's future, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. You know, Ryan said, helping himself to more lo mein. What started as an emergency countermeasure last night has actually turned into a brilliant business strategy. The industry analysts are already calling the integration of Innovate Tech and Mitchell & Associates visionary. Nathan must be seething, Melissa added with just a touch of satisfaction. He always wanted to be seen as the visionary. Speaking of Nathan, Ryan continued, what's your plan for dealing with him professionally? He's still valuable from a client relationship perspective. I considered the question carefully. We keep him where he excels, charming clients and closing deals, but we limit his access to financial operations and strategic planning. I took a sip of wine. And we keep him and Vanessa separated, at least professionally. And personally? Melissa asked gently. I set down my glass. That's for them to figure out. I'm done investing energy in either of them. Later, after Melissa and Ryan had left, I stood at the apartment window, looking out at the Seattle night. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening under streetlights. Somewhere across town, Nathan was in our house. The house we'd bought together when Mitchell & Associates landed its first major client. The house where we'd raised Emma. The house that had witnessed both our happiest moments and, recently, our most painful disconnections. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from Christine. Board paperwork filed. You are officially CEO of Mitchell Innovation Partners. Congratulations. I smiled slightly at the formality of it. In less than 48 hours, I had gone from being quietly sidelined to leading an expanded company. From discovering my husband's betrayal to taking control of my professional future. There would be difficult days ahead, navigating the corporate transition, finalizing the divorce, helping Emma adjust to her new family reality. But standing there in that moment, I felt a surprising sense of peace. Nathan had introduced Vanessa as his executive decision for the future, never imagining that in doing so, he had set in motion events that would make me his new employer. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to the most powerful transformations. I had been comfortable in Nathan's shadow for too long, content to let him take the spotlight while I handled the details. Now, I was stepping into my own light, reclaiming my voice and my vision. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, I allowed myself to acknowledge a simple truth. In trying to diminish me, Nathan had inadvertently revealed my strength. And that was something neither he nor anyone else could ever take away. 3 weeks had passed since the night of the gala that had transformed my personal and professional life. The Seattle autumn had fully settled in, bringing relentless rain that matched the emotional turbulence I was navigating. I'd established a routine of sorts, arriving at the office before anyone else, working late into the evening, and returning to the sterile corporate apartment that still didn't feel like home. The transition at Mitchell Innovation Partners was progressing better than expected. The integration of InnovateTech's AI platform with our established marketing services had created immediate synergies that impressed even our most skeptical clients. Our stock had risen 12% since the announcement, and industry publications were featuring us as a case study in successful tech acquisition. The human side of the transition, however, was considerably messier. Nathan had moved to Portland, as stipulated in his new contract, taking on client relations for our Pacific Northwest accounts. Our interactions were limited to weekly video conferences and terse emails about business matters. He'd hired Patricia Whitmore's main competitor as his divorce attorney, and the proceedings were already turning contentious despite being in their early stages. Vanessa had surprised everyone by accepting her reassignment to the audit department without complaint. She worked diligently, kept her head down, and had made no attempts to contact Nathan, at least not on company devices or within company premises. The office gossip mill suggested she was lying low until the situation stabilized, but I wasn't convinced. Vanessa Carter was too ambitious to simply accept defeat. I was reviewing the latest integration metrics in my office, still feeling strange to call it mine despite the new minimalist decor I'd chosen to replace Nathan's more traditional style, when Melissa knocked on my doorframe. "Got a minute?" she asked, closing the door behind her before I could respond. Her expression was serious in a way that immediately set off warning bells. "What's wrong?" She placed her tablet on my desk, sliding it toward me. "Ryan found something interesting in the audit of our financial records. Take a look." The screen displayed a spreadsheet of transfers from our operating accounts to a series of apparently legitimate vendors, all supplying services to our Portland office where Nathan was now based. "I'm not seeing the issue," I admitted, scanning. "The numbers." "Look at the routing codes," Melissa suggested, pointing to a column of seemingly random digits. I leaned closer. "These aren't standard bank routing numbers." "No, they're not. Ryan traced them. They're actually encrypted transfer codes to an account in the Cayman Islands. Nathan's been funneling company funds through fake vendor payments." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, given everything else Nathan had done, but it still felt like a physical blow. Corporate theft on top of everything else. "How much?" I asked, my voice tight. "Just over $2 million over the past 6 months. I sat back, processing the information. "Does Christine know?" "She's reviewing the documentation now. From a legal standpoint, this crosses the line from unethical to potentially criminal." "And the board?" "Not yet. We wanted you to make that call." I stood and walked to the windows, watching rain trace patterns on the glass. The easy path would be to inform the board, press charges, and let Nathan face the consequences of his actions. He certainly deserved it. But a public scandal involving financial fraud would damage the company, potentially destabilize our newly rising stock, and, most painfully, devastate Emma. We keep this internal for now, I decided, turning back to Melissa. Freeze the accounts, recover what we can, and have Christine prepare the necessary documentation in case we need it for leverage. Are you sure? Melissa asked, concern evident in her voice. He's stealing from the company, Liv. And he'll be held accountable, I assured her, but on our timeline, not his. After Melissa left, I remained standing at the window, trying to reconcile the Nathan I'd known, or thought I'd known, with the man who would steal from the company we'd built together. Had he always been capable of such dishonesty, or had something fundamentally changed in him? And if so, when? Had I been so focused on our business, on making our partnership work, that I'd missed watching my husband transform into someone I no longer recognized? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed Emma, who was visiting this weekend, her first trip home since everything had happened. Hey, sweetheart, I answered, trying to inject warmth into my voice despite the emotional turmoil still churning inside me. Mom, where are you keeping the good pasta? All I can find is that gluten-free stuff Dad likes. I smiled despite myself. Emma had arrived last night and was staying at the house rather than my cramped apartment. Even in crisis, some things didn't change, like her preference for traditional Italian pasta over Nathan's healthier alternatives. Check the pantry, top shelf, behind the quinoa. I used to hide it there knowing your father would never look. Emma laughed. Sneaky. How's the corporate empire today? Expanding nicely. How's the house? Weird without you here, she admitted. Dad called this morning, by the way. He's coming to Seattle this weekend, wants to have dinner with me. My grip tightened on the phone. Nathan wasn't scheduled to be in Seattle until next week's executive meeting. Did he mention wanting to see me too? No, just me. Is that okay? I can tell him to reschedule. Of course it's okay, I said quickly, not wanting to put Emma in the middle. He's your father, regardless of what's happening between us. After we hung up, I texted Ryan. Check Nathan's travel schedule and expense reports. He's coming to Seattle this weekend, unscheduled. Within minutes, Ryan appeared at my door. Nathan booked a flight from Portland to Seattle for Friday afternoon, returning Sunday evening. Hotel reservation at the Four Seasons, not our usual corporate accommodations. Interesting choice, I noted. The Four Seasons was significantly more luxurious than our standard corporate hotels. Charge it to his personal card? Company card, Ryan replied, his expression grim. Along with what appears to be dinner reservations at Canley's for Saturday night. Table for 3. 3, not 2, which would make sense for dinner with Emma, but 3. Vanessa's been taking personal days this Friday and Monday, Melissa added, joining us with her own tablet. Requested just yesterday. The pieces clicked together. Nathan was bringing Vanessa to Seattle, planning to introduce her to Emma over dinner at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, all while charging it to the company he was already stealing from. Should we intervene? Ryan asked. I considered the question carefully. Part of me wanted to confront Nathan immediately, to forbid this meeting between our daughter and the woman who had helped destroy our marriage. But Emma was 20, legally, an adult, and fiercely independent. Any attempt to control her interactions would only create resentment. No, I decided. But I want complete surveillance on Nathan's company devices while he's here, and I want to know if he attempts to access any company files or facilities. What about Emma? Melissa asked gently. Are you going to tell her? She deserves to know what she's walking into, I replied, already reaching for my phone. Rather than call, I texted Emma. Just learned Dad's dinner plans might include Vanessa. Thought you should know. Your choice how to handle. Love you. Her response came back almost immediately. Already figured. Dad's not exactly subtle. Don't worry, I can handle them. I smiled at my daughter's perception. She'd always been able to see through Nathan's maneuvers in a way I apparently hadn't. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and integration challenges. Horizon Ventures was proving to be an excellent partner, providing not just capital, but strategic expertise that helped smooth the technological aspects of combining our companies. Claire Zhang, their representative on our expanded board, had become a valuable ally, her tech industry experience complementing our marketing focus. By Friday afternoon, I was reviewing the latest projections from our financial team when Ryan texted, "Nathan landed, headed to hotel with guest. Confirmation, it's Vanessa." So they weren't even attempting to be discreet. I wondered briefly what Nathan had told his Portland colleagues about his weekend plans in Seattle. Was he openly acknowledging his relationship with Vanessa now? Or was he maintaining the fiction that this was a business trip? I forced myself to focus on the financial reports, but my mind kept wandering to Emma. She'd insisted she could handle dinner with Nathan and Vanessa, but I worried about the emotional impact. Emma had always idolized her father, inheriting his charisma and confidence. Finding out he wasn't the man she thought he was, that would leave scars I couldn't protect her from. Around 6, as I was preparing to leave, my office phone rang. The reception desk. "Mrs. Mitchell, there's a Miss Carter here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment." Vanessa, here, now. I'd assumed she would avoid me completely during her Seattle visit. "Send her up," I decided after a moment's hesitation. Better to face whatever this was directly. Minutes later, Vanessa appeared at my office door. She was immaculately dressed as always in a tailored charcoal pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe knot that emphasized her sharp cheekbones. If she felt any anxiety about meeting me, it didn't show on her perfectly composed face. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing even when I gestured to a chair. "I admit I'm curious why you'd want to see me at all," I replied, "especially on what I understand is a personal trip." If she was surprised that I knew about her weekend plans, she didn't show it. "That's actually why I'm here, about tomorrow's dinner with Emma." I kept my expression neutral. "What about it?" "I wanted to speak with you first. It wasn't my idea. Meeting Emma," Nathan insisted. "And yet, you agreed." Vanessa finally sat down, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to make a quick escape. "I didn't have much choice. He's changed since the restructuring." That caught my attention. "Changed how?" She hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "He's angry. All the time. Blames you for everything. Of course, but also me for not warning him about your tech company. He's drinking more, making riskier decisions with clients." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because despite what you might think, I don't want to hurt your daughter. Meeting her tomorrow feels wrong, especially since..." She trailed off, looking down at her hands. "Since what?" I prompted. "Since Nathan and I aren't really together anymore, not the way he's presenting it." I leaned back, studying her carefully. Was this a ploy? Some new manipulation? "The night of the gala," Vanessa continued, "when everything fell apart, it changed things between us. He needed someone to blame. I was convenient." "You seem to be forgetting that you were an active participant in the plan to push me out of my own company," I reminded her coldly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she replied, meeting my gaze directly. "Or even understanding. I made my choices. I'm simply trying to prevent collateral damage to your daughter." "By what? Not showing up to dinner?" "Nathan would just reschedule." "No, by..." She took a deep breath. "By giving you this." She removed a flash drive from her jacket pocket and placed it on my desk. "What is this?" "Everything. Emails, financial plans, recorded conversations from meetings you weren't invited to." including discussions about diverting company funds that I believe are still ongoing. I stared at the flash drive without touching it. Why would you give me this? Vanessa stood, smoothing her jacket with practiced precision. Because you did what I would have done in your position, only better. And because I've seen how you run things these past weeks, the employees respect you in a way they never respected Nathan. She moved toward the door, then paused. I'll go to dinner tomorrow because backing out now would only make things worse for Emma. But after this weekend, I'm transferring to our Chicago office. I've already spoken with HR about the position. After she left, I sat staring at the flash drive for a long time. Ryan had installed security protocols on all our systems following the restructuring. I couldn't simply plug an unknown drive into my computer, but the potential value of what it contained was too significant to ignore. I called Ryan, who arrived within minutes, security kit in hand. He took the drive to a secure workstation specially configured for testing potentially compromised media. An hour later, he returned, his expression serious. It's legitimate, he confirmed. And it's damning. Recorded conversations, email chains, detailed plans for the financial restructuring that would have pushed you out, plus evidence of Nathan's continued financial improprieties, including some we haven't discovered. Yet, why would she give us this? I wondered aloud. Ryan shrugged. Self-preservation? Vanessa's smart. She knows which way the wind is blowing. Maybe she's cutting her losses and trying to position herself as cooperative rather than complicit. Whatever her motives, Vanessa had just handed me enough ammunition to completely destroy Nathan, both professionally and legally. The question was, did I want to use it? I spent Saturday morning at the apartment, trying to focus on a novel while my mind kept circling back to Emma's dinner with Nathan and Vanessa that evening. She'd texted earlier, "All good, we'll call you after." Around noon, my phone rang. Christine. "I've reviewed the materials from the flash drive," she said without preamble. "There's enough here to justify immediate termination and potential criminal charges." "I need some time to think," I replied. "Of course. But you should be aware that some of these financial maneuvers are continuing. Every day we wait potentially increases the company's liability." After we hung up, I paced the apartment, feeling confined by its impersonal space and the weight of the decisions before me. I needed air, perspective. I grabbed my raincoat and headed to Pike Place Market, losing myself in the weekend crowds navigating the historic marketplace. The familiar sights and sounds, fishmongers calling out catches, artisans displaying handcrafted items, the aroma of fresh flowers and baked goods, had always centered me, even in our busiest times building the company. Nathan and I had spent countless Saturday mornings here early in our marriage, browsing the stalls and planning our future over coffee. Now, those memories felt like they belonged to different people entirely. As I stood watching ferries cross Elliott Bay, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dinner moved up to 5. Apparently, Nathan has business later tonight." Business. Sure. More likely he and Vanessa had plans that didn't include Emma. I texted back, "Let me know if you need an escape plan." Her response, "Already have one. Told roommate to call with emergency if things get weird." I smiled, proud of her foresight, then continued my aimless wandering through the market. Eventually, I found myself at our old favorite coffee shop, a tiny place tucked away from the main thoroughfare. Without thinking, I ordered my usual, a lavender latte, and Nathan's preference, a simple Americano. The barista handed me both drinks, and I stood there momentarily confused by my own actions. Habit. After 15 years, some patterns were hardwired, surfacing even as the relationship that formed them disintegrated. I dumped the Americano in the nearest trash bin and headed back toward the waterfront, sipping my latte and trying to determine my next move regarding Nathan. The evidence Vanessa had provided offered a clear path forward. Termination, legal. Action, public disclosure. justice by any objective measure. But I'd built Mitchell and Associates alongside Nathan. Its success was intertwined with our personal story. Destroying him completely would inevitably damage the company, our company, and the hundreds of employees who depended on it for their livelihoods. There had to be a middle path, one that held him accountable without burning everything down in the process. By the time I returned to the apartment, I'd made my decision. I called Christine and outlined my plan. She agreed to prepare the necessary documentation for Monday morning. At 6:30, my phone rang. Emma. That was quick, I answered. Dinner. Not going well? Oh, it's going exactly as expected, Emma replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. I stepped out to take a call before I said something Dad would regret. That bad? Worse. He introduced Vanessa as his partner in marketing innovation and kept talking about their exciting vision for the future. Then had the nerve to suggest I consider changing my major from computer science to marketing so I could join the family business after graduation. What did you say? I asked which family business. The one he was pushed out of or the one he was embezzling from? I nearly choked on my tea. Emma. What? Ryan told me about the financial stuff when he dropped off my laptop yesterday. Don't be mad at him. I practically waterboarded the information out of him. I'm not mad, just concerned about escalating tensions. Too late. Dad turned an interesting shade of purple and accused me of being poisoned against him by you. Vanessa actually looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. And now? Now I'm deciding whether to go back in and order the most expensive dessert on the menu or just call it a night. Dessert, I advised. Always take the dessert. Emma laughed. That's my mom. Hey, I'm staying at your apartment tonight, okay? I left a bag in your hall closet this morning. The house feels too weird. After we hung up, I straightened up the apartment and prepared the pull-out sofa for Emma. For the first time since moving in, the sterile space felt like it might eventually become home. Emma arrived around 9, looking emotionally drained, but somehow triumphant. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the sofa with dramatic flair, a habit from childhood that made my heart ache with familiar love. So, she said, accepting the mug of hot chocolate I handed her, Vanessa's actually not the villain I expected. No? I perched on the arm of the sofa. What changed your mind? She apologized to me. When Dad went to the bathroom, she told me she was sorry for her role in everything and that she never intended to hurt our family. Said she's transferring to Chicago next week. Do you believe her? Emma considered the question seriously. I think I do. She seemed genuinely remorseful. Unlike Dad, who spent the entire dinner talking about how everyone had conspired against him and how he was the victim in all this. I nodded, unsurprised by Nathan's narrative. He'd always framed setbacks as external forces working against him rather than consequences of his own actions. What happens now? Emma asked, looking suddenly younger and more vulnerable than her 20 years. With the company or with our family? Both, I guess. I sat beside her, choosing my words. Carefully, the company will continue to grow and evolve. The integration with Innovate Tech is going well. As for Nathan, I've made a decision about that. I'm meeting with him and the board on Monday. Are you firing him? Not exactly, but things will change. Emma studied my face. You're being very measured about all this. If I were you, I'd have him cleaning toilets with a toothbrush. I laughed. That was option 3. Seriously, though, she continued, after everything he did, the affair, trying to push you out of the company, stealing money, why aren't you going scorched earth on him? It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself. Partly because completely destroying him would damage the company, partly because public humiliation would hurt you, and partly because you still care about him. Emma finished softly. Not in the way I did, I clarified. But 15 years. Together doesn't just evaporate even after betrayal. I can acknowledge that while still holding him accountable. Emma leaned her head against my shoulder, something she hadn't done since middle school. You're a better person than I am. I ordered the $90 chocolate souffle and didn't offer to share. We spent Sunday together, avoiding any places that held strong associations with Nathan. Instead, we explored parts of Seattle we rarely visited. The conservatory at Volunteer Park, a tiny art gallery in Pioneer Square, a Vietnamese restaurant in the International District that had just opened. It felt like rediscovering the city, creating new memories untainted by betrayal. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity for Seattle in autumn. The sky a crisp blue, Mount Rainier visible in the distance, its snowy peak gleaming in the morning light. I took it as a good omen as I prepared for the day ahead. Nathan was scheduled to arrive for the executive meeting at 10 a.m. The board would convene at 11. I'd arranged for him to meet with me privately before either gathering. When he walked into my office at 9:30, he looked simultaneously haggard and defiant. The weekend in Seattle had clearly taken a toll. His normally impeccable appearance slightly rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. But the arrogant set of his jaw remained, a visible reminder of his refusal to truly acknowledge the consequences of his actions. You wanted to see me, he stated, remaining standing. Please, sit, I replied, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. He sat reluctantly, his posture rigid. If this is about dinner with Emma, This isn't about Emma, I interrupted, though I understand that didn't go particularly well for you. His jaw tightened. She's clearly been influenced by your perspective on the situation. Emma is remarkably perceptive on her own, but that's not why we're here. I opened the folder Christine had prepared. We need to discuss your continued financial improprieties. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? The $2 million you've diverted through fake vendor payments to the Portland office, the unauthorized expenses, the offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Those are legitimate business expenses, he protested, but the slight tremor in his voice betrayed him. Nathan, please, we have everything. The routing codes, the shell companies, the falsified invoices. Vanessa provided the additional documentation we were missing. Vanessa? His expression shifted from defensive to betrayed. She wouldn't. She did. Friday evening in this office. Everything has been verified by our security team. He slumped slightly, the fight visibly draining from him as he realized his position. So that's it? You're firing me? Pressing charges? That would be the standard corporate response, I acknowledged, and the board would support that decision based on the evidence. But, he prompted, sensing there was more. But I'm proposing an alternative. I slid a document across the desk. Voluntary resignation from Mitchell Innovation Partners, repayment of diverted funds, a clean private separation. He scanned the document, suspicion evident in his expression. Why would you offer this instead of prosecuting? Because public prosecution would damage the company we built together. Because it would hurt Emma. And because despite everything, I don't believe you started out intending to become this person. Nathan stared at the papers for a long moment. And if I refuse? Then the board receives the full evidence package at today's meeting, and the legal process begins. I met his gaze steadily. This isn't a negotiation, Nathan. It's a final courtesy based on our history together. One you didn't extend to me when you were planning to push me out of the company. The reminder of his own scheme seemed to deflate. His last resistance. He took the pen I offered and signed the documents without further comment. What happens now? He asked, echoing Emma's question from Saturday night. You'll announce your resignation at today's executive meeting, citing a desire to pursue new opportunities. The board will be informed privately about the financial recovery plan. You'll retain your ownership shares, but they'll be held in a voting trust managed by an independent third party. He nodded slowly, processing the terms. And us? The divorce? Proceeds as planned. I think we're beyond reconciliation, don't you? Something flashed across his face. Regret? Resignation? It was gone too quickly to identify. For what it's worth, he said quietly, it wasn't always a lie. Us, I mean. Not in the beginning. I know, I replied, and I did. Whatever Nathan had become, whatever choices he'd made, there had been real love once. That knowledge didn't erase the betrayal, but it allowed me to remember our history with something other than bitterness. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. You're better at this than I ever was, running the company, seeing the big picture. Yes, I agreed simply. I am. After he left, I sat quietly for a moment, absorbing the finality of what had just occurred. There was no triumph in this ending, no satisfaction in watching Nathan's downfall. Only a somber recognition that some chapters must close before new ones can begin. I gathered the signed documents, straightened my jacket, and prepared to face the executive team. Nathan would announce his resignation, I would outline our path forward, and then, one day at a time, we would all move on. When I first overheard Nathan introducing Vanessa as his executive decision for the future of our company, I'd felt invisible, discarded, replaced. Now, barely a month later, I had introduced myself not just as his new employer, but as the architect of my own future. Personally and professionally, it wasn't the ending I'd once imagined for our story, but perhaps it was the beginning I'd always needed. 6 months after Nathan's resignation, I stood in my office watching Seattle transform under the first genuinely sunny day of spring. The city seemed to be stretching awake after a long, gray winter, the cherry blossoms along the waterfront providing splashes of pink against the urban landscape. It felt symbolic somehow, a visual representation of the renewal happening in my own life. Mitchell Innovation Partners had not just survived the transition, we'd thrived. The integration of Innovate Tech's AI platform with our traditional marketing services had positioned us at the forefront of the industry. Our stock had risen 35%, we'd added 27 new clients, and our employee retention rates were at an all-time high. On the personal front, things had progressed as well. I'd finally moved out of the corporate apartment and into a loft in Pioneer Square, a historic space with exposed brick walls, enormous windows, and none of the memories that had haunted our suburban family home. Emma had spent her spring break helping me decorate, her natural eye for design making the space feel uniquely mine. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago, the legal proceedings remarkably straightforward once Nathan realized the prenuptial agreement he'd insisted upon now limited his claims rather than mine. Quarterly reports are ready for review, Melissa announced, entering with a stack of files. She'd been promoted to Chief Operating Officer during the restructuring, her organizational skills and institutional knowledge proving invaluable during the transition. Anything I should be concerned about? I asked, taking the files. On the contrary, we've exceeded projections across all divisions. The Chicago office is particularly impressive, up 42% since Vanessa took over operations there. I raised an eyebrow. Vanessa's performing well? Melissa nodded, settling into a chair opposite my desk. Surprisingly so. She's completely reinvented herself. Professional, ethical, extremely effective with clients. Ryan thinks we should consider her for the regional director position when Taylor retires next year. From co-conspirator to regional director in less than a year. That's quite a pivot. People can change, Melissa observed, when given the right motivation and opportunity. She was right, of course. The past 6 months had shown me repeatedly how transformative the right circumstances could be for the company, for those around me, and especially for myself. The management team I'd assembled after Nathan's departure had coalesced into a formidable leadership unit. Ryan had thrived as CFO, implementing financial controls that made the company both more profitable and more transparent. Christine had accepted a position as our general counsel, bringing her sharp legal mind in-house. And Claire from Horizon Ventures had become a trusted advisor on technological innovation. Together, we'd steered Mitchell Innovation Partners through the turbulence of leadership transition and into calmer, more productive waters. "Any word from Nathan?" Melissa asked carefully. She was one of the few people who still occasionally mentioned his name in my presence. "His final settlement payment came through yesterday," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "The financial ties are officially severed." After his resignation, Nathan had moved to California, accepting a position with a mid-sized agency in San Francisco. Our communication had been limited to legal matters and the occasional update about Emma. The bitterness that had characterized our early separation had gradually faded into something more like distant civility. I expected to feel more. Something when it was finally over, I admitted. Relief, perhaps. Or closure. Instead, it just feels like turning a page in a book I'm no longer particularly interested in reading. Melissa smiled sympathetically. That's probably healthier than carrying around anger or regret. "Speaking of moving forward," I said, changing the subject, "how are preparations coming for the Innovation Summit next month?" We'd decided to host an industry event showcasing the integration of AI technology and marketing, a perfect platform to demonstrate our leadership in the field and attract potential clients. The summit would feature keynote speeches from industry experts, workshops led by our team, and an evening gala to celebrate our company's rebirth as Mitchell Innovation Partners. "Everything's on track," Melissa confirmed. "We've got confirmation from all the major speakers, registration is almost at capacity, and the Four Seasons has finalized the arrangements for the gala." The Four Seasons, the same hotel where Nathan and Vanessa had stayed during their ill-fated weekend in Seattle. The coincidence didn't escape me, but I found I didn't particularly care. That hotel held no special meaning for me, positive or negative. It was simply a venue that suited our needs. Perfect. And the demonstration of the new predictive analytics platform? The development team promises it will be ready. They're working through the final bugs now. The predictive analytics platform represented the culmination of my original vision for Innovate Tech, an AI system that could anticipate market trends and consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy. I'd been working on the concept for years, initially as a side project that Nathan had dismissed, and later as the foundation of my separate company. Now it would be unveiled as the flagship product of our integrated enterprise. After Melissa left, I turned my attention to the quarterly reports, but my mind kept drifting to how dramatically my life had changed in 6 short months. The woman who had stood frozen at the company gala, watching her husband publicly position another woman as her replacement, seemed like a stranger now, someone tentative and accommodating whom I barely recognized. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad called. Wants to come to my graduation next month. Okay with you?" I smiled at her consideration. Despite our attempts to keep her out of the middle, Emma inevitably felt the pull of divided loyalties. "Of course. It's your day. Both your parents should be there to celebrate." Her response came quickly. "Thanks. Told him separate seating arrangements are non-negotiable." I laughed out loud at that. Emma's protective instincts toward me had intensified since Nathan's betrayal, manifesting in small but meaningful ways. Her insistence on separate seating at graduation was typical, creating boundaries to shield me from potential discomfort. "Not necessary, but appreciated," I texted back. "I can handle being in his vicinity for a few hours." "Maybe, but I'm not risking him bringing a date." I hadn't considered that possibility, Nathan attending with someone new. The idea should have bothered me, but I found it didn't. Whatever emotional hold he'd once had on me had dissipated during these months. of rebuilding my life without him. My assistant buzzed to remind me of my afternoon appointments, a meeting with potential investors, followed by a strategy session with the creative team about our rebranding campaign. I gathered my materials, focusing my thoughts on the business, opportunities ahead, rather than the personal complications behind me. As I moved through the remainder of the day, I noticed a pattern that had become increasingly common. Colleagues seeking my input on strategic decisions, deferring to my expertise, treating me with a respect that felt fundamentally different from my previous role in the company. When Nathan had been CEO, I'd often felt like my contributions were secondary, valued but somehow less significant than his. Now, leading on my own terms, I found my natural management style was more collaborative than his had been, but also more decisive when necessary. The result was a corporate culture that balanced innovation with stability, creativity with accountability. A reflection of values I'd always held but hadn't always been able to fully implement. By the time I left the office that evening, the sun was setting over Elliott Bay, casting long golden light across the water. Instead of heading straight home, I decided to walk along the waterfront, enjoying the unseasonably warm evening and the rare opportunity to see Seattle bathed in sunset colors rather than rain-washed gray. As I strolled past the ferries and tourist attractions, I found myself reflecting on the concept of identity. How much of mine had been wrapped up in being Nathan's wife and business partner, and how liberating it had been to rediscover myself outside those roles. My phone rang, Christine calling about a potential acquisition we were considering. "The due diligence report just came in," she said once I answered. "The digital marketing firm in Boston looks solid. Good client portfolio, strong leadership team, complementary services to our current offerings. And the financials? Clean as a whistle. Ryan's team went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. No hidden liabilities, no concerning patterns. After Nathan's financial deceptions, we'd implemented exhaustive vetting procedures for all business dealings. Trust, but verify. A philosophy that had served us well during this expansion phase. Let's move forward then, I decided. Schedule a meeting with their leadership team for next week. I'd like to fly out and meet them in person. Already? Arranged. Tuesday and Wednesday in Boston. I smiled at Christine's efficiency. Am I that predictable? Only in your thoroughness, she replied. You never make major decisions without looking people in the eye first. It's one of your strengths as a leader. After we hung up, I continued my walk, eventually finding a quiet bench overlooking the bay. The upcoming acquisition represented another step in the strategic plan I'd developed after taking control of the company, expanding our geographic footprint to become a truly national firm with specialized expertise in key markets. Nathan had always talked about expansion, but his vision had been more about prestige than strategic growth. Opening offices in glamorous locations like New York and Los Angeles, primarily for the cachet they would add to his professional profile. My approach was different, identifying markets where our services filled a specific need, acquiring established firms with strong local connections, and integrating them thoughtfully into our corporate structure. As twilight deepened around me, I acknowledged how much I'd learned from watching Nathan's mistakes, not just his personal betrayal, but his business missteps as well. His tendency to prioritize appearance over substance, his focus on short-term gains over sustainable growth, his habit of taking credit for others' work while deflecting blame for his own failures. I'd observed it all during our years together, absorbing lessons in what not to do as a leader. The realization brought no bitterness, only a calm acceptance that sometimes our greatest teachers are those who show us paths to avoid, rather than follow. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Dinner? Ryan and I are trying that new Thai place on Pine. I smiled, appreciating the invitation. In the aftermath of Nathan's betrayal, Melissa and Ryan had become more than colleagues or even friends. They were family now, a support system that had helped me navigate the most challenging period of my life. On my way, I texted back, rising from the bench and heading toward downtown. The restaurant was busy when I arrived, the lively atmosphere a testament to its popularity despite being open less than a month. Melissa waved from a corner table, where she and Ryan were already seated, drinks in hand. "Perfect timing," Ryan said as I joined them. "We just ordered appetizers." "And drinks," Melissa added, signaling the server. "You look like you could use a lychee martini." I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "You have your 'I've been thinking too much' face on," she explained. "It's different from your 'I've been working too much' face." "Scary that you can tell the difference." I accepted the menu from the server, scanning the options. "How was everyone's day?" "Productive," Ryan replied. "The quarterly tax preparations are ahead of schedule for once, and the Boston acquisition numbers look promising." "Christine called me about that. Sounds like we're moving forward." "It's a smart move," Melissa commented. "Their client list complements ours without too much overlap, and their creative director has an impressive reputation." The conversation flowed easily, transitioning from work matters to personal updates. Ryan was considering buying a houseboat on Lake Union, a long-time dream he'd put off while focusing on his career. Melissa had finally agreed to move in with her boyfriend of 2 years, a graphic designer who worked for a competing agency, creating a Romeo and Juliet situation without the tragic ending, as she described it. Their lives were evolving, just as mine was, all of us moving forward in ways that might not have been possible if Nathan's betrayal hadn't forced us to reimagine our futures. "How are the plans for the Innovation Summit coming along?" Ryan asked as our entrees arrived. "On track," I replied. "Though I'm starting to wonder if we should have made it a 2-day event. The registration numbers are higher than anticipated." "We could still adjust," Melissa suggested. "Add some breakout sessions on the second day for those who want a deeper dive into specific topics." "What about the predictive analytics demonstration?" Ryan asked. "Is the platform stable enough for public viewing?" "The development team says yes, with some limitations. We won't be offering full functionality yet, just enough to showcase the potential." "Smart," he nodded approvingly. "Always leave them wanting more." We continued discussing the summit plans over dinner, the conversation flowing between strategic considerations and light-hearted banter. This easy camaraderie was something I'd missed during the latter years of my marriage to Nathan. The ability to be fully present with friends without constantly monitoring his moods or anticipating his needs. As we finished the meal, Melissa raised her glass in an impromptu toast. "To Mitchell Innovation Partners, 6 months of exceeding expectations." "And to its CEO," Ryan added, "who made it all possible." I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the Thai spices or the lychee martini. "To all of us," I corrected. "None of this would have happened without this team." After dinner, I declined their offer of a ride and opted to walk the few blocks to my loft, enjoying the mild evening and the chance to process my thoughts. The city felt different now, not just because spring had finally arrived, but because my relationship to it had fundamentally changed. For years, Seattle had been the backdrop for my life with Nathan, our restaurants, our social circles, our shared experiences coloring my perception of the city. Now, I was rediscovering it on my own terms, creating new associations and memories, untainted by betrayal. My loft welcomed me with soft lighting, a smart home feature Emma had insisted on installing during her spring break visit. "So you never have to come home to a dark apartment," she'd explained, though we both knew the real reason was her concern about my living alone for the first time in my adult life. I kicked off my shoes and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a spectacular view of the city skyline. The space was distinctly mine in a way the suburban house had never been, industrial yet warm, minimalist yet comfortable, with strategic pops of color in artwork and textiles. My phone buzzed with an email notification, a message from the head of the Boston firm we were acquiring. Looking forward to meeting next week. Your reputation precedes you. My reputation. That was something that had evolved considerably over the past 6 months. In industry circles, I was no longer known primarily as Nathan Mitchell's wife, or even the woman who outmaneuvered her husband. I had established my own professional identity as an innovative CEO, a technological visionary, a leader who had successfully navigated a challenging transition and emerged stronger for it. The thought brought satisfaction rather than pride. I wasn't interested in building a reputation for its own sake. Nathan had been obsessed enough with that for both of us. Instead, I wanted to be known for the substance of my work and the integrity of my leadership. My phone rang again, this time a FaceTime call from Emma. "Hey, Mom," she greeted when I answered, her dorm room visible in the background. "Got a minute? I need thesis advice." "Always," I replied, settling onto the sofa. "What's the dilemma?" "I'm stuck between 2 approaches for my computer science project. The practical application that's sure to get a good grade, or the experimental one that might fail spectacularly but would be more interesting. And you're calling me because Dad would tell me to play it safe, and I already know that's not what I want to do." She grinned. "I want permission to take the risk." I laughed, recognizing the strategy. "Since when do you need my permission to take risks? Wasn't it you who decided to change your major from business to computer science despite everyone's advice to the contrary?" "True, but this is bigger. The experimental approach could become my graduate school application project if it works. And if it doesn't, then I learn from the failure and create something better." I nodded approvingly. "Sounds like you've already made your decision." "I guess I have," she admitted, "but I wanted to run it by you first." We talked for another 20 minutes about her project, an AI application that could identify patterns in climate data too subtle for human analysts to recognize. Her enthusiasm was contagious, reminding me of my own excitement when developing the initial concept for Innovate Tech's predictive analytics platform. After we hung up, I found myself reflecting on the parallels between Emma's academic choices and my own professional journey. We had both found ourselves at crossroads, choosing between safe, expected paths and riskier but potentially more rewarding ones. And we had both ultimately chosen to bet on ourselves, despite the possibility of failure. The next morning dawned clear and bright, another unusually perfect Seattle spring day. I decided to walk to the office, taking a route through Pike Place Market to enjoy the morning energy of vendors setting up their stalls and early customers seeking the freshest produce. I was passing the original Starbucks when someone called my name. Turning, I found myself face to face with David Wilson, Nathan's college roommate and former legal counsel for Mitchell & Associates before the restructuring. "Olivia," he said, seeming genuinely pleased to see me. "I thought that was you. You look wonderful." "David," I replied, surprised but not uncomfortable. "This is unexpected. Are you still in Seattle? I thought you'd moved to Portland." "Just visiting, meeting with a potential client downtown." He gestured to the coffee shop. "Do you have time for a quick cup? I've been meaning to reach out." Curiosity won out over caution. "Sure, but I only have about 20 minutes before I need to be at the office." Inside, we found a small table. In the corner, away from the tourist crowds, David looked essentially the same. The conservative suits and cautious demeanor that had made him a perfect legal counterbalance to Nathan's more flamboyant style. "I've been following the company's progress," he said once we had our coffees. "The stock is performing impressively. The integration of the AI platform was brilliantly executed." "Thank you," I replied, wondering where this conversation was heading. "Christine has built an excellent legal team to support our expansion." He nodded, acknowledging the reference to his replacement without visible resentment. "She's very good. I always thought so." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. I owe you an apology, Olivia. This was unexpected. For what, specifically? For not warning you about what Nathan was planning. I knew some of it. Not everything, but enough that I should have said something. I studied him carefully, looking for signs of insincerity, but finding none. Why didn't you? He sighed, looking down at his coffee. Professional obligation, initially. Attorney-client privilege. But if I'm honest, it was more than that. Nathan and I had been friends since college. I believed in his vision for the company, or thought I did. By the time I realized how far he was willing to go, how much he was concealing even from me, it was too late. When did you know? I asked, genuinely curious about the timeline of Nathan's deception. I suspected something was off when he started creating those shell companies without proper documentation. I confronted him about it once, about 3 months before the gala. He assured me it was all above board, just tax planning that you had approved. I nodded, remembering how Nathan had always excelled at deflecting questions by providing partial truths mixed with outright lies. And you believed him. I wanted to, David admitted, which is no excuse. I should have dug deeper, especially when he started working so closely with Vanessa on financial matters that should have gone through proper legal channels. He met my gaze directly. I failed in my duty to the company, and I failed you as a friend. I'm sorry for that. The apology seemed sincere, a rare acknowledgement of complicity from someone in Nathan's former inner circle. I appreciate that, David, I said, meaning it. What happened? Happened. We've all moved forward. Some more successfully than others, he noted with a small smile. Nathan isn't doing as well in San Francisco as he'd hoped. The agency that hired him recently downsized his department. I felt a twinge of something. Not satisfaction at Nathan's struggles, nor sympathy exactly. Perhaps just acknowledgement that actions have consequences, often extending far beyond what we initially anticipate. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and was surprised to discover I genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish Nathan ill. I simply wanted him to remain firmly in my past. He misses the company, David continued, watching me carefully. Talks about it constantly, according to mutual friends, especially the Innovation Summit coming up next month. He's been following the announcements. I tensed slightly, suddenly wondering if this chance meeting had been arranged. Did Nathan ask you to contact me, David? He looked startled, then embarrassed. Not directly, no. But he did mention wanting to know how the predictive analytics platform was progressing. Said it was his brainchild originally. This was so absurd, I nearly laughed. The predictive analytics platform had been entirely my concept, developed during evenings and weekends while Nathan had been working late. Or, as I now knew, meeting with Vanessa to plan my professional ouster. The platform was never Nathan's project, I said firmly. He barely understood the technical specifications, let alone contributed to its development. David nodded quickly. I assumed he was exaggerating his involvement. It's becoming something of a pattern. I glanced at my watch, ready to end this unexpected interaction. I should get to the office. Of course. He hesitated. For what it's worth, Olivia, I think the company is better under your leadership than it ever was under Nathan's. More innovative, more ethical, more sustainable. I stood gathering my things. Thank you for the coffee, David, and for the apology. I genuinely appreciate both. As I walked the remaining few blocks to the office, I found myself processing the encounter. David's apology had been unexpected, but welcomed. A small piece of closure I hadn't realized I still needed. His revelations about Nathan were less surprising but oddly illuminating. Nathan claiming credit for the predictive analytics platform was entirely in character. He had always been skilled at positioning himself at the center of successful, initiatives while distancing himself from failures. But hearing about it now, 6 months after our separation, I found it didn't anger me as it once would have. Instead, it confirmed the fundamental disconnect in how we viewed our shared history, and reinforced my certainty that ending both our personal and professional relationships had been necessary. By the time I reached the office, I had mentally filed the encounter away as an interesting footnote rather than a significant disruption. I had more important matters to focus on: the Boston acquisition, the Innovation Summit, the ongoing evolution of Mitchell Innovation Partners under my leadership. Melissa was waiting in my office, looking uncharacteristically concerned. "We may have a situation," she said as soon as I entered. "What kind of situation?" I asked, setting down my bag. "Nathan's applied to attend the Innovation Summit next month as a representative of his agency in San Francisco." I paused, David's comments about Nathan following the summit announcements suddenly taking on new significance. "When did this happen?" "The registration came through last night. I only saw it this morning when reviewing the attendee list." "Interesting timing," I murmured, thinking of my chance encounter with David. "He clearly wants to be part of it." "We can decline his registration," Melissa suggested. "Site capacity limits or something." I considered this option briefly before shaking my head. "No. That would make it seem like we're afraid of his presence, or that he still has the power to disrupt what we're building." "Are you sure?" "It will be his first time back at a company event since the restructuring. The media will notice." "Let them," I replied, feeling unexpectedly calm about the prospect. Nathan's presence might actually highlight how far we've come without him. Besides, denying his registration would only feed into any narrative about personal vendettas overshadowing professional decisions. Melissa studied me carefully. "You've really moved on, haven't you?" 6 months ago, the thought of Nathan showing up at a company event would have sent ripples of anxiety through the entire executive team. I smiled, realizing the truth in her observation. "I guess I have. Nathan feels like a closed chapter now, relevant to my history but not determining my future." "Well, in that case," she said, her expression lightening, "should we put him at the table nearest the kitchen for the gala dinner? Maximum server traffic, guaranteed cold food." I laughed. "Tempting, but no. Let's treat him like any other industry colleague. Professional courtesy, nothing more, nothing less." "You're a better person than I am," Melissa muttered, but she was smiling. "Not better," I corrected, "just focused on different priorities now." And it was true. 6 months ago, I had been consumed with responding to Nathan's betrayal. First, surviving it, then countering it, then rising above it. Now, my energy was directed toward building something new and valuable, toward leading on my own terms, toward creating a future defined by my vision, rather than in reaction to his actions. Nathan's attendance at the summit would be a footnote, not a headline. An echo of a past that grew fainter with each passing day as I moved confidently toward a future entirely of my own design. The woman who had once stood frozen, watching her husband introduce his mistress as his executive decision, had transformed. Through challenge and change, through betrayal and renewal, I had introduced myself not just as Nathan's new employer in that pivotal moment, but as the architect of my own destiny, professionally, personally, and irrevocably. The day of the Innovation Summit arrived with perfect timing, exactly 1 year after the fateful gala where Nathan had tried to push me aside. The symmetry wasn't lost on me as I stood backstage at the Seattle Convention Center, preparing to deliver the opening keynote. Through the curtains, I could see over 800 attendees settling into their seats, industry leaders, potential clients, technology innovators, and yes, somewhere in that crowd, Nathan. Melissa had confirmed he'd checked in earlier, accompanied by his new boss from the San Francisco agency. 2 minutes, the event coordinator whispered, adjusting my microphone. I nodded, taking a deep breath and reviewing my mental notes one final time. This moment represented more than just a business milestone. It was the culmination of a personal journey from betrayal to reinvention. The predictive analytics platform I was about to unveil had evolved from a side project Nathan once dismissed to the cornerstone of our company's future growth strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the CEO of Mitchell Innovation Partners, Olivia Mitchell. As I walked onto the stage, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. I glanced around the packed auditorium, momentarily meeting Nathan's gaze in the third row. His expression was unreadable, but it no longer mattered. His opinion, his approval or disapproval, had ceased to be the metric by which I measured my worth. Thank you all for joining us today, I began, my voice steady and confident. A year ago, Mitchell Innovation Partners embarked on a transformative journey, integrating cutting-edge AI technology with proven marketing expertise to create something truly revolutionary in our industry. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined our vision for the future of marketing analytics, culminating in a live demonstration of the predictive platform. The audience's reaction exceeded even our optimistic expectations. Spontaneous applause erupted when the system accurately forecasted consumer response patterns to a test campaign in real time. As I concluded my presentation, I couldn't help adding one personal note. The journey that brought us here wasn't always straightforward. Sometimes the most valuable innovations emerge not from careful planning, but from unexpected disruption, when we're forced to reimagine what's possible and find strength we didn't know we possessed. The standing ovation that followed felt like vindication, not just for the technology we'd developed, but for the personal resilience that had made it possible. Backstage, Emma was waiting. She'd flown in specifically for the summit, taking a day away from her graduate school preparations. "You crushed it," she said, hugging me tightly. "Did you see their faces when the platform predicted those engagement metrics?" Total shock. "I saw," I smiled, returning her embrace. "Including your father's." Emma pulled back, studying my expression. "Are you okay with him being here?" "Completely," I assured her, realizing it was entirely true. "His presence highlights how far we've come, not what we lost along the way." Throughout the day, I moved through workshops and networking sessions with an ease that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Several times I spotted Nathan across a room, watching me interact with industry leaders who now sought my insights rather than his. Each time I acknowledged him with a professional nod before returning to my conversations. During the afternoon break, he finally approached me directly, his expression carefully neutral. "Impressive presentation," he said, maintaining a respectful distance. "The platform has evolved considerably since the early concepts." "Thank you," I replied simply, neither encouraging nor discouraging further conversation. "Your keynote mentioned finding strength through disruption," he continued, lowering his voice slightly. "I suppose I provided that disruption." I considered his words, detecting a hint of his old habit, trying to position himself at the center of narratives, even those about his own betrayal. "You were a catalyst," I acknowledged, "but not the source of my strength. That was always there, waiting to be recognized." Before he could respond, Claire from Horizon Ventures joined us, her timing impeccable. "Olivia, the panel needs you. For microphone testing. We're starting in 15 minutes." Nathan stepped back, understanding the conversation was over. "Good luck with the panel," he said, a flash of something like regret crossing his face before he returned to his group. The remainder of the summit passed in a whirlwind of presentations, networking, and strategic conversations. By the time the closing gala began that evening, the success of the event was undeniable. We had positioned Mitchell Innovation Partners as an industry leader in marketing technology integration, secured 4 major new clients, and generated significant media coverage, I stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching attendees mingling over champagne and gourmet appetizers. The scene echoed that other gala a year ago, but everything fundamental had changed. Most importantly, the woman observing it all. Melissa appeared at my side, looking elegant in a deep green gown. "Quite a difference from last year's event," she commented, following my gaze across the room to where Nathan was engaged in conversation with several industry colleagues. "Night and day," I agreed. "Speaking of differences," she continued, "have you seen the latest industry rankings? They were published this morning." She handed me her tablet, open to a business publication's annual list of most influential marketing executives. My name appeared at number 6, the highest-ranked woman on the list, and 15 spots above Nathan. I handed the tablet back with a smile. Validation is nice, but it's not what drives me anymore. "What does?" she asked curiously. I looked around at the thriving company we'd built, the technology we'd developed, the team we'd assembled. Creation rather than reaction. Building something meaningful rather than responding to someone else's vision or betrayal. As the evening concluded, I took the stage one final time to thank everyone for attending. Looking out at the audience, I felt a profound sense of completion. The journey that began when I overheard Nathan and Vanessa plotting in his office had reached its destination, not just professional success, but personal transformation. Nathan had introduced his mistress as his executive decision for our company's future, never imagining that in doing so, he would set in motion events that would make me his new employer, and ultimately, the architect of a life and career, far beyond what either of us had ever envisioned. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.